that note, we'll slip into a short break after that. In fact, let's move to debate 2 now. The crisis in Pakistan continues, and amidst an economic meltdown and a 200% rise in food inflation. As the government struggles to rein in high prices, the IMF is in talks to release over $1 billion in financial aid, but has some tough conditions for the Sharif government after rejecting the circular debt management plan. The IMF has asked the government to raise the electricity tariff by over 12 rupees to restrict the losses of the cash-bleeding power sector. The international body also wants a 600 billion rupee mini budget with higher taxes as well as political parties on board for the bailout to be cleared. However, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif is against tax rises and subsidies slashing, fearful of a backlash ahead of the elections which are due in October. The demand for political consensus is also a tall order, as Imran Khan is confident of making a comeback in these elections. The political drama is also escalating in Pakistan, as former Interior Minister and Imran Khan's close aide, Sheikh Rashid, has been arrested over the corruption charges, while the country is reeling under the shadow of terror with the recent Peshawar blast claiming over 100 lives. The Tehreek-e-Taliban party has vowed more attacks against Pakistan government. So, with an economic, political and security crisis, is the Pakistan government on the brink of collapse? Let me bring in my guests now. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of ORF, Kriti Upadhyaya, VP and Founder, India-US Tech Council. We also have Raja Faisal, Senior Pakistan Journalist. Mr. Sareen, do you sense it is endgame for Sharif government?
You know, Maria, if it was only Sharif government, which was really facing the problem, I don't think one would have been very concerned. Because governments can come and go. I think what is in crisis is now the Pakistani state itself.
Okay.
After what we are seeing in terms of how the economy is imploding, in fact, it's virtually in a meltdown situation, regardless of whether the IMF loan comes through or not. And the impact that any of those reforms, and the irony is that those reforms are necessary for the economy to stabilize. But the way the reforms will play out will actually cause enormous instability and dislocation and economic distress. So how that plays out is going to create another storm in Pakistan. The politics is totally broken. In fact, you now have top political leaders openly accuse the army of trying to assassinate them, of being behind the bomb blast in Peshawar, and whatever else you can think of. So that entire political consensus which is required for a state is breaking down completely.
Okay, then
you have the terrorists on on a resurgent path, and their attacks are increasing not just in intensity but also in terms of their reach, geographically. So yes, I think it is probably the most serious crisis that Rump Pakistan has faced since 1971.
And then if it is a serious crisis indeed, then Ms. Upadhyaya, do you sense that IMF demands is a bullet the Sharif government will not bite just ahead of elections, because elections are in October?
No, I think it's a very precarious situation because, as Dr. Sareen said, that the political situation is really making it worse. What Pakistan needs right now is to really cut down on its populist measures, cut down on the subsidies. I mean, those fuel and power subsidies were a major contentious issues by the IMF. And the IMF is right? You can't, because with the difference between Sri Lanka and Pakistan here is exactly that Sri Lanka, it was, certain events that led to it, but with Pakistan, it's like these recurrent asks for debt servicing, while they continue to pursue these populist measures. Secondly, there's really a double whammy. I mean, last time I was here, we were discussing how the economy has also been shut off, which is making this worse. The Pakistan experts would know better, but at least from what I'm seeing, I don't see any clear end in sight in terms of political stability. So it's really a sad situation here. And even with the economic headwinds, it's anyway hard to raise debt. But given Pakistan's situation, it's really going to be nightmarish. And I definitely don't see any political stability or things getting better anytime soon.
Raja Faisal, are you equally nihilistic, or can Pakistan find a way out for itself to get a bailout? Because none of its allies are also coming to help it.
If we look at obviously the friends of Pakistan in recent past, we have seen that Pakistan's friends, they have always helped Pakistan, but this time around it is getting very difficult for Pakistan to get help from its friends. Number one, and number two, if we look at
and who are the friends?
IMF.
Who are the present friends? Yes.
Well, obviously the friends, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, all of these countries, they used to help help Pakistan in the past. And of course, Americans, they always extended help, obviously until they were here in Afghanistan, they have been, but now they don't. If we look at IMF, of course, I would agree with Sushant. Dr. Sushant has raised an excellent point that the sort of implications it would have for people of Pakistan and Pakistan as a state, they would be dire. Why? Because IMF requires power tariffs to be increased, extra taxations to be imposed on people of Pakistan. And don't forget that people of Pakistan right now, at large, they are facing inflation, and that inflation would be almost doubled in that case if the taxations and tariffs are imposed on Pakistan. So these are the things, and I think there are tough times for Pakistan. Here I would like to mention that I think timely Pakistan had to think about certain ways to get out of
and can they really get out
these kind
of
of situations.
What do you think? Being a journalist on ground, can they get out of it?
They can, but sometimes
what are the options before Pakistan? What are the options before Mr. Sharif?
Well, I think right now there is a sort of a dilemma which is being faced by Pakistan as a state, and that is that we don't have political harmony, we don't have economic consensus, and then political consensus.
Okay, so there's no political consensus. Sushant Sareen, you get the final word. There is no economic consensus, and corruption of the Zardaris and the Sharifs have been have been political points which have been discussed for years. Do you think the anger now against the political class has reached a boiling point? But there's also this army which is continuing to assert its supremacy because they realize that they are the ones who are governing Pakistan.
Maria, I think, when people keep talking about corruption is a problem, but corruption is not what has brought Pakistan to this pass. It is gross mismanagement of the sorts you can't imagine. Thinking that you can live endlessly off other people's money. The IMF, for example, the IMF program, which the Pakistanis are now cribbing about, has been agreed by the Pakistanis themselves. They agreed to all those conditions way back in 2019. Now, their modus operandi has been agree to whatever, it is there on the table and then feel free to flout it. And now the IMF is saying that, no, this way you cannot continue because after every 3 years you come back to us, you start begging for funds. Now, even if, and Maria, this is important, all the discussions right now, every discussion about where the monies will come from, the IMF package, etc., is for the next 6 months. That's till the end of June. But there's life after June. Because when the next fiscal year begins, they again have about 26 or 27 billion dollars in terms of debt which they have to pay off, apart from other requirements which they will have to meet. Where are they going to get the money from? So clearly, they are not going to be able to go back to the Saudis, the Emiratis, or the Chinese for more money. The IMF package, if they go back to the IMF for a 23rd program, the IMF is going to put even more onerous conditions. Now, the Pakistanis have to learn to pay their own bills. They have to learn that they cannot spend more than what they are earning, and they cannot do it endlessly and think that the world is going to come and bail them out. That's not going to happen. So the politics of it is, of course, a problem, but the way they've mismanaged their country is a bigger problem. Now, whether the people will rise up, Maria, and this is very interesting, the Indian subcontinent is not given to revolutions. People will crib about it. People will probably have some fights on the streets, but they don't rise up in revolt against the government of the day.
No, but we did see it in Sri Lanka.
Fervor, and there is no revolutionary leader.
We saw it in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, what did we see in Sri Lanka? You saw 3 or 4 days of unrest. People came out on the streets. Do you see that same thing happening anymore?
Okay.
No, it's all fizzled out.
Okay.
The subcontinent is not given to revolutions.
Okay, let's see what happens in Pakistan now. Sushant Sareen, thank you so much for your time. Kirti and Raja Faisal, thank you so much. We are slipping into a short break. Up next, in the wake of Budget 2023, we decode the impact with Saket Dalmia, President of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Stay with us.